wonderful in me. God bless you.
Well, have a seat.
Thank you. I have one already.
Well, hey, I got a bigger one.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to 1963.
Fantastic. So there's the TV set. Oh my gosh, that is neat. Because my dad sold television sets and was a
Repairman?
he invented some of the tubes that ran the TV and stuff like they worked with Adler over in Chicago. And he invented so many things that Adler got credit for. He was able to retire to Florida when he was only 39.
Ah.
They went fishing a lot.
Yeah. Yay.
So you have all this here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which one's the
And this one, I actually let people pick it up, use it as a prop, but I finally had to put plastic over everything because even though signs said, do not touch the newspapers, I kept finding little pieces of newspaper under the tables and all that.
They get brittle anyway. And by
Yeah.
covering them, you stop the oxygen from decomposing them, so it's really good.
Yeah. Eventually, I need to do it professionally.
Well,
This
charming. I've seen an interview of you on 2013 when you defended Lee, and I'm so grateful. He loved kids. He was a good man. He was kind to me, and it's just been they've said horrible things about him.
Well, that's the government side, and as I tell people, I don't do this to honor Mr. Lee. I do it because it's truth to history.
Thank you.
That
just gives me chills.
Yeah.
It really does, because I'm not doing this necessarily to honor Lee. I'm doing it because I love him.
Yeah. So, but he was always kind, very sweet to my brothers. He and I had a few conversations, not a whole lot.
But you knew him.
I did. But he would play with my brothers basically almost on a daily basis. If he was here and we were here, he was going to stop whatever he was doing and go outside and play ball, tag, whatever they were into, cowboys and Indians. He didn't care.
He told me, in New Orleans, that one time I was really sad Lee wasn't around, and these two boys, actually three of them all together, came by and said, I wanted Lee to play with him because you did horseyback with him,
See, and that's just not your typical 24-year-old. It really isn't. Most 24-year-olds, they're into their own thing. The fact that he'd go outside when he was in Irving, seeing the family, to play with the neighborhood kids. He had a newborn and a 2-year-old in the house. He had plenty to do, but he took the time to go outside and play with the children. And I feel like that says volumes as to the core of
his values, for one thing. And this is the thing, he had a really good sense of humor. We walk along, and if he saw a cat or a dog, he also liked animals a lot. And he'd say, hello, Mr. Cat, or hello, Mr. Dog, like that. Had his kind of sense of humor,
Well, I know I met a gentleman that said that he was in the Marines with him.
Oh, okay.
And that he said he wasn't a jovial man, but he had a cute sense of humor.
Yeah, he did.
And that, he wasn't a jokester, but he got the jokes.
He got these little things he would say that I thought were really kind of unique. But what's nice is that they tried. Some of the people who wrote against him he hadn't even seen him at the time and all that, said, well, he stayed in his room and he never talked to anybody and he never left the room and nobody knew anything about him. That kind of thing.
Well, that's not what this family saw. Now, my grandmother does say that he stayed to himself somewhat, but we had all different kinds of people that lived here. Some were overly social, would come in, sit down in front of the TV and stay here all night long and just yip, yap, yip, yap, yip, yap. Others would come in, watch a show, and leave. You know, others, they hid in their rooms. We never saw them at all. So everyone's different.
Yeah.
And Mr. Lee was not the type to walk in from the work, see some men in here and go, "Hi, fellas, how are you?"
No,
You know, that was not his personality. He would not acknowledge that he saw them and head to his room. Now, if they spoke to him, he was always going to speak and you know, return the conversation. If they wanted to converse more, he would oblige. But he was not one to sit down and have a long conversation just with the guys, you know. And he enjoyed being with my brothers more than anything.
Oh yeah, he always did. It's interesting, and, you know, we call him Mr. Lee because he used that for his last name, all that. But what's interesting is that Mr. Lee, in New Orleans, I called Dr. Mary Sherman Dr. Mary, and now everybody's calling her Dr. Mary. I mean, everybody. We just did that, and so we often call him, for a joke, I called him Mr. Lee. And there, you're doing it too.
Well,
that's
in
kinda
this house, he signed in here as O.H. Lee. So naturally, we would call him Mr. Lee. But because this family is a very southern family, even if he had signed in under his true name and told us to call him Lee, my grandmother and my mother would have demanded that we put the Mr. You never talked to using the first name of an adult. And I'm the same way with my grandchildren now.
And they don't understand that today, I know. The
Well,
way
we've gotten away from showing respect.
Isn't that the truth?
Pat, we should have had you identify yourself, you know, give us your name.
Oh,
and,
okay.
and how you're connected to. We're at the Oswald Boarding House on 1026 North Beckley in Dallas. And you are?
I am Patricia Hall, and my grandmother was Gladys Johnson, and she was the homeowner and landlady when Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald lived here at the time of the assassination. And my brothers and I came here every day after school. It was your basic, get the homework done, wait till mom picks you up after work. And that's why we knew Mr. Lee and pretty much everybody else that lived in the house.
That's really neat that you got to know, especially that side of him, you know. Because I saw a lot more of that side of him that you'd be surprised than anyone would imagine, because we had kids all over the neighborhood. Where if we walked together, and the kids were everywhere, and we got to know quite a few of them. One, his name was oddly Robert Johnson. I wish I could find him, you know, that kind of thing. But he called him Bobby, you know. It's just like that. I mean, he was very just friendly with them.
Yes, yeah.
So did he ever play football with them or football?
He played ball, tag. He played anything my brothers were into. He was willing to play.
Did he do anything? Talk to you? You said he talked.
He did talk to me, but we did not have long conversations. I felt that he related to me because I was having trouble in school. and I think he recognized that I was having trouble in school. In his day and in my day, they didn't know what dyslexia was. There was
And he had it
yes,
himself.
right. I know that now, and but my grandmother was one of those that was very strong on education because she did not have a lot of education, and if I was a lazy learner, she was going to pound it into my head. And so if she decided it was time to drill for a test I was going to have, it didn't matter who was in here, whether they were watching TV or reading the newspaper, we were going to stop, sit down, and drill. And Mr. Lee wouldn't stay in the room very long when she started that. I could kind of tell that it made him nervous. It made him uncomfortable. But
Well, maybe because of what he went through.
exactly. And but if she gave me a break to answer the phone or something like that, and he was still in here in a very low voice where she could not hear him because no one wanted to get the wrath of my grandmother.
Okay.
He would say, "Don't worry about it. Just do your best, but don't give up." And
That was him. That's the way it was for him too. You know, he read voraciously,
Mm-hmm.
but he had to struggle to really learn how to read.
I did too.
And yet he ended up reading like this doesn't sound like everyday life in ancient Rome. It was actually, that was a manual that archaeologists used. I mean, and he was reading philosophy and ethics and all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And he just read and read and read. Then he became a fast reader even with his disability.
Right, and because I'm not a fast reader. I never became a fast reader. But I was finally diagnosed the third time I decided to go back to college. And once we got the diagnosis, they said, okay, there are techniques that we can teach you. They said, but you've already learned your own technique. And if we add ours in there, we're afraid it'll just totally mess you up. They gave me help in other ways.
Are you able to use both your hands?
I mean, dyslexic, ambidextrous, no,
Are you?
I'm not.
Okay, because he would eat sometimes, a lot of the times he'd eat with his left hand, and he was taught to write with his right hand, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was a natural lefty in a way, but he always used, for almost everything, his right hand. That's why I was asking.
Well, so many, back then, you were discouraged to use your left hand.
Yeah.
In fact, I had a teacher when in parochial school, they didn't care if I was a lefty or a righty, but I would write with my pencil on the middle finger.
Oh my.
But when I got into public school, I had a teacher that said that was not the proper way to write, and she would walk around the classroom with a ruler.
Oh no.
And if she saw me writing with the pencil on my middle finger, I would get a whack. And so to this day, if my ring finger gets tired because I'm writing a lot, I can switch to my middle finger real quick and just keep on writing.
Okay, now I want to ask you a question because
Yes.
that is about.
Before you ask the
Yeah.
question, would
ask
you
you
like a
questions.
bottle of water? Would that help?
It probably would. I lost my voice because of the conference. That really got to me that they said they found a holster in his room because he never owned one. I saw this.
Well, I didn't know, you know, and so, you know, like I said, it has been suggested that it was planted. I don't know how much of that I buy into, but I do know that he did not move into this house with that revolver.
Yeah.
my grandmother went through everyone's things the first day they moved in. You could get away with that in those days. But she did.
I was bent out. It is being recorded. Good.
She did it right in front of them. It was a very open thing. It was part of the intake. If you had a problem with that, then you needed to go find another place to stay, because in her mind, that meant you were going to be a rule breaker from the very beginning.
Well, this is kind of neat because his wife was living with a Quaker, and what did he do? Leave a revolver with them? I mean, you know, or did he hide the revolver like he had the rifle in full view for 55 days, supposed to be on the floor? I mean, it's
it's always been my understanding that when they moved their things into
the garage,
that the revolver and the rifle were rolled up together in a rug.
It wasn't a rug, it was a baby blanket. This is what's so funny. They've got a rug type thing there now. It's too thick and heavy. It was
because
it was his baby's favorite blanket. That's what's so, and you can see it in the pictures that it's kind of floppy.
Yeah, now that's what I heard. I heard that when Marina pointed out where the rifle should have been, they went over, picked it up, and it just...
Well, actually, Ruth Payne actually went over and stepped on it. Now, how did she know it was empty? Well, she did. It's right in the Warrens Commission thing.
It
says, I went over and stepped on the blanket. Well, the reason I'm even mentioning that is that think about the kids that were playing. He loves kids, and they played, and it says that they were playing in the garage. You think he would leave a rifle on the floor, wrapped up in a blanket with all those little kids in there?
Yeah.
His own toddler. Yeah. They said the rifle was on the floor for 55 days, right in front of this wood saw they're making, and there's sawdust everywhere. But there's not a speck of sawdust on that blanket, which tells me it was put there the night before.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah. It sounds like, it was someplace else.
I think so.
And if he was taking it to the book depository, then he took it out.
But they said that it had been on the floor there for, even when he was there in town for 45 days, he left it on the floor in the garage.
It probably they're just remembering it wrong.
Yeah, well, they said it was always there on the floor.
Yeah.
And that and Mr. Payne said he had to move it a couple of times, and he thought it was camping equipment. This is a genius type guy that felt drawing helicopters, and he picks it up and thinks that it's camping equipment. Well, anyway,
we never know.
Yeah. Well, one thing, you see, I never saw the rifle, and he young man, he was kind of showing off to me a little, So I saw his hunting knife. I saw his two. He had two. Had one almost like a switchblade, and another they're really just those regular knives that you pull out, pocket knives. He had two pocket knives, and I gave him, and they found it here. You must have seen it. But he had a hunting knife about this big. It was an Imperial. They called it Imperial, I think. But I bought that thing for him. It was brand new. I got it in.
Well, he didn't move into the house with it. Because if he had brought in a weapon of any
it was
sort,
in a gift box.
Oh, it would.
Yeah.
My grandmother would have opened it. She had 3 rules that would get you kicked out of this house: drinking, a weapon, and someone in your room.
Well, then they planned it because I gave him that knife. It should have been in a sea bag. It should never, because he had a sea bag ready to go. That sea bag has disappeared. And out of that sea bag they found his Minox camera and all kinds of stuff. He had that thing ready to just grab it and go. It has totally disappeared. And the last I knew, he had that hunting knife in there in the bag. They have him having the hunting knife in his room in there.
Well, now, I'm not saying that he did not bring it in at a later time. Yeah. I'm simply saying he did not move in to this house with that.
Well, I don't think he would bring it here. That's what I'm saying. I think they brought things over.
Well, I don't,
Who was they?
Police. I think the police came in and brought things in, because he
not
never,
that day they did not.
Not what, on the 22nd?
Yeah, absolutely
Nobody
not.
brought anything in.
No,
Okay, so when they walked in, they didn't have anything in their
No,
hands or anything.
no.
That's important to know.
yeah.
Okay.
They came in around 4 o'clock-ish.
Yeah.
They asked my grandmother to show them Oswald's room, and she said, I don't have an Oswald. And they said,
Oh my, right.
and they said, you have to. And she goes, no, I don't. I know who's in my house. And they described him. They said he worked at the book depository, and they said he gave us this address. And she said, well, now I have an O.H. Lee that works at the book depository. And they said, that's him.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's when she opened his room, and according to my cousin, that's when she saw a holster on the bed. Now
who came in? Because we know that somebody that ran into the Texas Theater was not Lee, but he looked just like him. And then that's always a concern of ours, because there was a man that was acting like Lee, man, doing things and saying things.
well,
like,
I've heard that.
It's
I've
true.
heard that. I honestly don't know how much of that theory I swallow. From my understanding, when Mr. Lee was captured at the Texas Theater, when they did the paraffin test for gun residue,
Yeah.
it was positive on his hand, but negative on the face and the
which
neck.
meant he didn't fire a rifle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so since J.D. Tippit was killed, and it's my understanding that ballistically it was the same gun and bullets that matched, with J.D. Tippit. So that says to me he had to have been there.
Okay, now let me tell my version of things. There were two kinds of bullets, Remington and the 38.
Smith & Wesson.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm talking the bullets themselves were two different kinds of bullets
That would fit that gun.
Yeah, but that
Two different brands.
two different brands of bullets.
Okay, that would fit the
Usually
gun.
means two different guns. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
And the first bullets that actually picked up the cartridges were semi-automatic, which the 38 isn't.
that's right.
And would not
Yeah.
fit in a revolver.
It would just
No.
not fit in it. What were
And you're talking about the bullets that were thrown into a bush
Yes,
near the Tippit. Okay, yeah, but if Lee did not shoot J.D. Tippit, where did he shoot the gun that he would have gun residue on his hand for that to be
because
positive?
printer's ink, if you touch a newspaper, you'll get nitrates on your hand as if it were gunpowder.
That's what they're tested for, is nitrates,
All
not
those
gunpowder.
Boxes of books and stuff all that morning, and he would have had most of it on one hand, equally on both hands. So was he shooting also with his left hand? See, so there's a problem there, and it means that they're testing for nitrates, but they're not telling the public that, wait a minute. Also, when you shoot, like if you're shooting just one hand, there should be residue on the top of the hand here, and there wouldn't be, but there's residue on both hands.
Okay.
And also, here's the other thing that people need to understand. It looks like he was fingerprinted when they brought him in, right?
Okay.
Fingerprint is, the ink is all nitrate. You're supposed to go and do the paraffin test before you do any fingerprinting. But I see it was booked. You can see the time on the wall, and did the paraffin test last. that means that they wash off all this, they're gonna leave particles that equally on both hands from the ink, and it will test as nitrates as if he fired a gun. That just was not
because I had
fair.
never heard that.
It was
But-
never fair, it wasn't fair to do that.
Well, but you know, one of the things that I've said in '63, law enforcement in general, whether you talk FBI, Secret Service, CIA, they were still learning about
Yep.
the chain of evidence, the importance of wearing gloves to keep evidence from being tampered with and fingerprinting.
You know what?
Not-
I mean, it's nice to talk to you.
Not all law enforcement was buying the new law enforcement code that J. Edgar Hoover was trying to teach them.
Right.
And so I do agree from the get-go, it was botched by the Dallas police, it was botched by the FBI, Secret Service, and anybody else that was involved. It was just botched from the very beginning.
Well, a number of things I knew he owned don't show up in the collection of things he had, and which I thought was interesting. For example, he always had more books than they show. And then I found out there was a book I described to Mary Farrell, who was a researcher who lived here. And there were other people present, just like there are right now. And I said, you know, he read to me from this Pushkin's collection of poetry, and one of them in there also had the Queen of Spades, a short story. And then that Queen of Spades had been turned into an opera, and he watched that in Minsk and so on. And then I described this great book to him. Mary Farrell said, what? What great book? And I said, well, I told her the size of it, and a floppy cover and all that kind of thing, and poorly printed, you know, because it's a Soviet book. She said, that's the book that Ruth Paine has, and showed me that she said belonged to Lee Oswald, you know. Yeah. And so she knew I knew it. But the thing is Ruth Paine kept a bunch of Lee's books. It looked like he only had a couple books, you know, and although I can prove that she really had was that one.
Well, but you gotta, you know, Marina was living there.
Yeah,
So she
She's got
had
it.
a lot of their stuff.
that's right.
And so when Marina and the children were sequestered, the government wasn't going to take every little thing that they had. So yeah, Ruth would end up with some of it.
She would.
I mean, I don't think every little thing that has happened has to come under suspect. I think a
It's just
lot
natural.
of natural common sense thinking needs to be used.
Wouldn't it be nice? It would be nice
You know,
to say that this thing happened just because, of course, of ordinary living.
yes,
Yep.
absolutely, and that is one of the things that I love about my grandmother, is that the characteristic of Mr. Lee, what she said about him from the very first day, never changed. It didn't matter how many times they asked her to embellish and stretch it or whatever, she wouldn't do it.
So what did she say?
Well, she simply said he was a quiet, soft-spoken, courteous young man that played with her grandkids. You know, that he was...
I have never even seen this I can't even remember seeing that in any of the reports. Maybe I missed it, but it's been Earlene Roberts. That's all I've seen.
Well, because for many years, everybody thought Earlene Roberts was the housekeeper. And I always wondered, why would they think the housekeeper was the house owner? Well, we finally figured it out.
What was it?
One of the detectives, somebody in the police force that was interviewing, wrote in his notes, talked to Earlene Roberts, landlady, comma, Gladys Johnson.
Oh.
It's so, all the years that our English teachers have said, punctuation counts.
It does.
It definitely does, because it reads, Earlene Roberts, house landlady, comma, Gladys Johnson.
Nope,
That comma should have been after Earlene Roberts,
so
landlady.
So there she dropped right out.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's why. And so, and my grandmother, she felt sorry for Earlene Roberts. She said,
Did she have one bad eye?
oh, she had two bad eyes.
Okay.
She wore thick glasses. And my grandmother said that she always wanted to be more than what she was.
Oh, dear.
And so there's an interview with Earlene sitting on this side and my grandmother over here. And I don't know who is doing the interview. But Miss Roberts is telling about renting the room to Lee, and she's saying, I, and my grandmother is sitting here.
Oh.
She let her have her moment. But Earlene was not allowed to rent rooms. I saw my grandmother snap her back into place many a time. She could show a room, but she could not officially rent the room.
So can we look at the room?
Yeah.
Oh.
If you check his
Site.
authenticity out, his bed is from Mrs. Bledsoe.
Oh, no. Where
That-
he was for a few days.
He was there just a few days.
Yep.
This is all the original.
Oh, my God. Oh, I want to sit on it so bad. Oh, you have no idea how much it means to me if I just touch it.
Well, come on.
It's not, it wouldn't mean anything like that to anybody else.
It's not real bright in here, but this is, now there were French doors here, just like the way those. So they were painted, so he had his privacy.
Yeah, I know, but I've got to tell you a story. No wonder I didn't understand this. When I first moved to New Orleans, I moved into a little room, a parlor in the front that had these French doors.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when he told me he moved into a room sort of like what I had, I didn't understand. But he said there was a night, maybe it was, they had a beauty, he said it had a, anyway, never mind. I'm just thrilled. So, and oh, look, so these are short curtain rods, each one of them.
Well, now that's
that
what
been
I
changed?
put up there.
Okay.
Yes. Each one of these windows
Yeah.
had the old-fashioned 2-inch aluminum Venetian blinds.
Yes.
Okay, so each one had those. Then there was a bank of shears, and then there was another heavier drape on top of those.
Mm-hmm.
So during the day, he could actually make this room quite dark.
Yeah.
So there was no need for curtain rods.
Okay, I just want to touch
Yeah,
it.
no, go ahead. Yeah,
It means a lot to me. No, it means a lot to me.
yeah.
Oh
Now,
my
it's
God.
not the 50-year-old mattress.
No, I don't
That's
care
just
about
too
that.
creepy
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me.
No, but still,
But,
he was
yeah.
here. He was here.
He was here. And that is the bed that he
Could
slept
you
on.
guys do me a favor? Could you just leave me just for a second by myself?
Sure.
They just want to tell me he was loved.
This is the wardrobe closet that he did use.
Yeah.
Let me get out of the way.
And I suppose, is this the one or is it similar to this here?
That is original to the house.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be very honest and very accurate as to what is a period piece and
Did
what
he have a white one in here, Rick?
Yes, it was
Okay.
a small little white table, and I'm sure over the many years it just fell apart.
Yeah.
You know, but this is the one I remember being in here, so that I put it back in here.
Okay.
You know, but when you know he came in, opened the closet door, got the Eisenhower jacket, and then from one of these
He didn't own
drawers.
an Eisenhower jacket.
Yes, he did.
Well, wait a minute. What color was it?
I think it was all
Was it gray?
beige to khaki.
Okay, Artie. In my book, you can see I said he had a khaki jacket because they're
And
they were
it's a-
trying to
you
say,
know-
they're trying to say it was a gray one. I never saw a gray one.
A short waisted windbreaker type thing.
Yeah.
President Eisenhower. It was the favorite jacket that President Eisenhower
Okay,
wore.
but it wasn't. Was it? You're sure it wasn't gray?
Well,
Can you remember?
as a child, I didn't pay attention to that. You know, I was 11 years old.
Okay.
Who cares?
No, I saw a brown jacket, but I never saw a gray one or
You know,
a white one.
but he could have gotten it before, after he met you.
Well, that's
After-
true.
Yeah,
That's true.
I mean, you know.
Well, it would have had to be. Let me tell you, after meeting me, it would have had to be in a period of 8 weeks.
Well, it could
possible.
have been.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so these are drawers
And
here.
these are drawers.
Yep.
And so from one of the drawers, it is thought that he picked up the .38 revolver from one of the drawers.
Well, he had a 38, but it was a long nose. He didn't have a short, snub nose one.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
I'm
know.
just saying what I saw. You know.
You know.
When I.
You know, because the smaller little table that was in here didn't have a drawer that a gun would fit
Yeah.
into. So it had to be from one of these drawers. Yeah.
But the police said that the holster was. They said it was hanging on some kind of post or something in here. Hanging anyway.
Well, now I
this-
was told that today.
Yeah.
I was told that they found it in one of the drawers.
But didn't you
So
just
see,
say you said
I
up there
know.
to open the door and
And
it
my-
was sitting on the.
And again,
Yeah.
that's what my cousin told me.
Uh-huh.
So
Was
over the
cut-
many years,
Yeah.
she might be remembering it wrong.
Mhm.
My grandmother might have remembered it wrong and told her that. I don't know. I do know that when the police came in, they took everything out of
Meant
here,
if they did, yeah.
threw it onto the bed,
Yeah.
just dumped the drawers,
Really?
everything onto the bed, took the sheets, wrapped everything
Oh
up
my
into
gosh.
the sheets, and walked out.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, when I say law enforcement botched everything, I mean they literally botched the investigation from the get-go.
They should do an inventory here before we got there because you can put anything, you can add anything at the police station could have been added to it.
It could have,
I mean,
you
maps
know,
or things removed.
but honestly,
It's hard for you to believe
I really don't believe the Dallas police was involved. I do believe they were led by the nose.
that. Yeah. Well, I'm saying, man,
Texas bravado is ridiculous.
well, I know that the materials that the police sent to the FBI when they came back, about like half of it was gone. They kept it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and, well, I mean, no, but they even took it off the inventory. The photographs, those were removed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, you asked.
And that's why it's so important for us to get full disclosure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So there was something that you told the people who were here before that they wanted me to know?
Well, we've got all the researchers, we've got all these authors that's done all of this research and work.
Yeah.
And they have found facts. But they are so invested into their own egos that they're not willing to say, okay, here's my proof. This, and this. I really don't have I really don't have verifiable proof on this, and this. Let's take that and throw it away.
Well, that's horrible, you know, with that.
And then others, you know, because I truly believe that most likely the truth is already out there. We know what the truth is. If we can get past the little stories of this and that and the different little theories. But because they're not willing to say, I really can't verify this.
Well, these guys with their books, they get mad at me because they say, now my book isn't selling, you've ruined my book, and, you know, I hate you, you know?
Well, you know, but that's what I mean. They're invested in their own ego and the money. And if they truly wanted to know the absolute truth, the who's, the why's, and the how's, they would strictly show the evidence.
There you go. Did Jim Mars ever come here?
No. The only time he came here was when Gail Nix Jackson had her book signing here. And I have a real problem with Mr. Mars.
Well, that would be a problem, yeah, if he hadn't come here.
Because he wrote in his book that this house was a safe house. It most certainly was not. He wrote that there was like 10 or 12, I haven't read his whole book, so I can't swear to it, but I've been told that he's got this huge amount of bedrooms down in the basement. There are 5 bedrooms and a bath, but we have all these bedrooms that we could just stuff Cuban dissidents in.
Oh, maybe. Are you sure you read that he wrote that?
Yes.
Okay, because I wasn't under the impression that he wrote that.
Yeah.
But he was writing what somebody else said.
Well,
okay, I just...
Well, I was surprised earlier when you told us how many beds there were in this house.
Well...
Yeah, how many were there?
Altogether, there are 20 bedrooms on this property.
You have the one back there.
Yes, the house back there has 8. 8 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Is that still being used today? It doesn't look like it.
No. Right now, it's in disarray, needs to be totally gutted and redone. The basement has 5 bedrooms and a bath. I have one roomer that lives down there. He's a real good friend of mine. Loves old houses, and I thank God for him every single day because he helps me keep the property up and helps me fix emergency situations. Yeah. This main floor here had 7 bedrooms, and my grandmother rented out 5 of those.
So you had like 12, or how many?
18 bedrooms she rented out.
And, you know, I mean, the official, if you look at the property on the internet, you know, the Zillow and all that, it seems like you only have like 2,000 square feet, and, you know.
But they don't count the basement.
Isn't that something? Wow.
Well, I'd never heard about all the beds. That was shocking to me.
You know, so, yeah. And this house in 63 was a white house, if you get my drift. That's just the way it was. That's the way it was. I don't apologize for it, but there's no way there were Cuban dissidents in this house.
Well,
or on the property.
I dated a white Cuban. There were white Cubans, and some of the white Cubans would use fake names and all that, and maybe you wouldn't have known about whether they were from Cuba or not. I'm just saying that Tony Lopez Frisquet, who I dated, you would never dream he was from Cuba at all.
Mm-hmm.
But did he have a Cuban accent?
No. He went to a fancy school and everything where he learned English, but you would never know. I'm just saying that, I'm not saying they're all like that or anything like that.
Right, but there
Castro
was.
would send people over who were so well schooled in English.
Well, I don't
stuff,
doubt
yeah.
that. I don't doubt that part. But there was a safe house in South Oak Cliff.
Yeah.
It was a very rough neighborhood then. It's still a rough neighborhood. I don't doubt that maybe Tosh Plumley or whatever his
Tosh
name
is somebody I've met.
is, was at a, safe house, but they've got to stop saying that this address was the safe house, because it most certainly it was not. You cannot have a safe house with a housekeeper, a landlady, and an 11-year-old going into every room every day to clean. That's impossible.
Well,
You
in
cannot
the
do it.
property back there, did you ever go inside?
Oh
there?
heavens, I've been
Right.
out there a
Oh,
thousand
Well,
times.
let me ask you, I don't know how it looks now, but when's the last time you went in there?
Oh, I was in there last week.
Okay, so you do go in there and there's stuff in there. I was
Yeah.
just wondering if that wooden board is still there that Tosh was telling me about.
I have looked for that. I have videotaped it.
Yeah.
Nothing. Brian, and I think you know him from England. He goes by Alan
I
Tydell.
certainly- Brian is a card, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to give him permission to go back there. Right now, it is a liability for me to let somebody back there.
Even if they sign a release?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that. God forbid if somebody got hurt, I would be held responsible, and I'm not doing it. But
Frankly, if it's for England, they don't have a legitimate litigious. I'll get it out yet. Anyway.
Litigious?
legitimate.
Yeah. Litigation is the basic word there, and they're not a suing society like we are. So you were not in danger from
That's
them.
beside the
Yeah.
point. But
Litigious, I don't know why I couldn't get it out.
I have, I've looked. From everything I've been told, Tosh says that he carved his name in
Initials.
his initials
Yeah.
into a
wooden drain board.
wooden drain board. A wooden drain board would be connected to a kitchen.
Well,
And there was no kitchen back there at all.
there was no kitchen in those.
Never.
Well, actually, when he told me, it was a wooden block that was there by a sink.
Well, I've looked. No. Brian was here today, and he said that when I told him I had been looking and there was nothing, he confronted Tosh.
Good.
And that Tosh said, I get the two addresses mixed up. So if that's the truth, then he needs to stop using this address.
That's right.
Because if I meet the man and he says it here, I will call him a liar.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry.
Well, Tosh has had open heart surgery. And honestly, he hasn't been very well the last few years and everything.
I hope he recovers well. I don't, wish him ill will at all. But for
But
years.
you are a witness, you see, you were there, that's very important. And
Yeah,
I
there
don't
was
care.
never anything like that they could have used. There was, if he was in the back upstairs bathroom, there was this tiny little, I guess you'd call it a 1x4 shelf over the sink. Well, that wouldn't hold up worth anything. So why would you put your initials on that?
Yeah.
You know, all of the men kept their own toiletries and all that in their rooms.
I'd like to tell you something. Lee said when he first came here that he was actually applying for a room back there, but they were all full. That's what he said.
There was no room available except that room.
Okay. So
And a
that's,
few days after he moved in, someone else moved out. My grandmother gave him what she called first choice. Anyone that lived in that room, if someone moved out, she gave them the choice to move into a larger room first. And according to my grandmother, he looked at the room and said, Mrs. Johnson, I really don't have that much stuff, and I like the big windows in my room.
that just sounds just like him. And-
So,
yeah.
you know, so he chose to stay in that room.
Well, he told me he chose to stay in the rooms. I mean, that's why I'm asking you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to verify the little thing that he said that originally when he was sent over here. He thought
So
it was
were you in contact with him
Oh yeah.
after he was
Here.
arrested in here?
Oh no! Wait a minute. After he's arrested, they wouldn't let anybody contact him.
Right, but
No, he
but
told me all about being here. He just
no,
said-
he couldn't have,
No.
because he was not here before he met you.
What?
No,
Wait a minute. Let me explain something to you. He was here in November. He moved in here in November.
yes.
We were in contact by phone.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean.
well, then that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
That's what I was
okay.
asking.
Heck,
You were in contact with him
Yeah.
after he was
and
here.
What I almost positive he called one time from here, but he spoke to me in Russian when he talked to me. But he at least called his wife at least once from here too.
Oh, heavens, yes. We heard him speaking Spanish and Russian all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And my grandmother knew that his wife was from Russia, so she always assumed that he was probably talking to his wife.
Well, actually, at least once he was talking to me. I'm pretty sure it was from here, because he'd only use Russian if somebody was around. Now, I didn't know that was Russian. I would talk back to him in English. I mean, I can understand Russian. It's sort of like there's a degree of proficiency. First you can read it, and then you can speak it, you know, that kind of thing. So I could understand him, but I really couldn't respond very well back in Russian. But I could read it, you know.
Okay.
Well, about like most of us from Texas know some Spanish. It's the same sort of thing, you know.
I'm no español.
Yeah. Well, at least you know something. See, you can come out with a few words. You know, you always
Yeah, I'm probably one of the few people that was ever kicked out of high school at Spanish.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, in general, at any rate, I could understand it pretty well at that
Yeah,
time, and I
sure,
in
yeah.
Russian. And if there are other people around, he was tended to use Russian.
What did he say, if anything, about his mother?
He didn't have anything nice to say about his mother.
Mm-hmm.
We both had really mean mothers
Okay.
and neglectful.
Did
his
he
mom-
say why she moved the family all the time?
Well,
and
his-
how she
his
afforded
version-
it?
His version is a lot different from the one that's official, because he said it was her pride. She was too proud to take help from the family, and it really suffered because of that. That's what he told me. You don't read that usually. It's just you read that she just kept moving, you know, all that kind of thing.
But how did she afford it? How did she raise 3
She put them
children?
She put them, because at that time she put them in a children's home. She only
Oh,
paid
now I knew she
$10
tried
a
to
month
put.
per child, which a number of people did, because women, they didn't have provisions back then for if they became widows. in New Orleans, that's what they did. I mean, and they took very good care of the kids. Loved it there. They were not unhappy at that Bethlehem school. They took good care of them. He was a lot more unhappy living with his mother because she would lock the door if she was out. She never would give him a key to the house. And if he came home from school, she wasn't there. He had to sit outside, or he learned to open the window and get in. Okay, and then often the refrigerator is almost empty because she ate out a lot and didn't provide for him. He told me he'd make ketchup soup for himself. You know, with bread. I mean,
well, I knew his childhood was horrendous.
Well, he had loving let me tell you though, he had very loving aunt and uncle in New Orleans, and they treated him like a son.
That's good.
And also, they don't mention Mr. Echtel. They're trying to say that he had no father figure, but for about 3.5 years or so in there, Mr. Echtel that she married, he was really, really nice to Lee. He just adored him. Okay. And they got a big lot of toys and all kinds of stuff, you know, and everything. And, so it wasn't so bad. And the house was nice, and the boys, his two brothers got sent off to a military academy for about 1.5 years until things got kind of bad again. But because Mr. Echtel started cheating on his mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have always felt, and I have said, that I felt that Marguerite was probably undiagnosed mentally ill. Do you think that is fairly accurate?
No, I don't.
Okay.
She's just a very selfish lady.
Okay.
Selfish and proud, and
Okay.
she kept a very clean house. It was spotless.
Okay.
And Lee slept on the floor. I mean, because he didn't provide for him very well. I mean, on a mattress on the floor, you know, when she was like in a single bedroom and all that. And they're trying to say he slept in bed with her. He didn't do it.
No, and I never heard that.
Well, no, these are things they make up, you know.
Yeah, and but from
She was, you know,
some research I've seen,
well, she
he
couldn't
went
hold a
to
job, yeah.
he went to a different school every single year, sometimes 2 schools in a year.
Well,
And that, you know, and so you're saying that this gentleman that she was
Yeah.
married to
he had money.
took
Yeah.
care of him and all that.
Yeah.
So why didn't he at least get to stay in the same school for
Well,
2
if you
years?
look at it, he did. They kind of make up a lot of stuff. It wasn't
Well,
that bad.
You know,
Here's the thing that though, like they moved out there, and I know they were out there at least a couple years there in the school. What I know is that you also have to look, like when they went up to New York, Lee told me about this, when they came back to New Orleans, Marguerite realized that he had spent so much time playing hooky, because she moved at least 3 times when they were just in the Bronx. Look, she lived there 3 months, the rent would not be paid, she'd move rather than pay the rent. That's what she was doing.
Okay.
And with no consideration for, and the others, she was a proud woman, as they say, and all that. Pretty good at selling hosiery and dresses, but when it was like she wasn't very. She just couldn't hold a job more than 3 or 4 months at a time. That was the big problem.
Okay.
And so he was forced. He just got sick of it. He got sick of having to go to one school after another and have to fight his way into, you know, how they boys pecking order.
Well, I would think, you know,
So
Mr. Lee was a small man, and so
Well, I'm a small
to
woman. I
me,
never thought of a small man.
so I would equate that he was a tiny little boy. And so when you're always the new kid on the block, the new kid in school, you might as well put a sign on him that said,
Pick me.
pick me,
Yeah.
pick on
Yeah.
me, pick on me. And so I would imagine that he was constantly.
Well, you'd be surprised. He held his own. I know this because when they put him in a boys' kind of a correctional facility, he ended up with respect. He really did. And he
Now, when
he's
did
a
he
little
go in?
bantam rooster, okay?
Okay, so
That was in
when,
New York because he's playing hooky so much because he got sick of going to school. He even went across the border to Canada. And people say, oh, come on, he's only 12 and a half. Wait, he was 19 when he went to the USSR.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he could certainly go across the border into Canada with a half a day trip on a bus, which he did. And in fact, I found witnesses to that because I knew what he did. And they were just thrilled because I said, he talked to this guy at Customs and officer, said, you can't go across, said he begged him, and so he took this bus to Crystal Beach and went across. He said, if you don't get back, by, I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock at night, he said, I'm gonna get you arrested, and you'll be really sorry. He did come back, they became friends. 10 years later, he meets him again, but I'm just saying, so I went to the family, and I said, at one time, this man was customs officer up there at Buffalo, by Buffalo, New York,